Black woman denied first-class seat. Pilot apologized when he saw her name. Amina Hayes stood near the gate, shoulders straight, coat folded neatly over her arm. The fluorescent lights above made everything feel colder than it was. Gate A22 buzzed, with quiet chatter. Families juggling bags, business travelers scrolling phones, flight attendants making last-minute calls. She checked the screen again. Flight 3726 to Chicago, on time. She'd just finished her keynote in Atlanta, a full house, standing ovation. She should have been floating. Instead, she felt a familiar tightness at the base of her neck. Her phone buzzed. Mom, call me when you land. Proud of you. Amina smiled softly and slid the phone back into her purse. She glanced down at her shoes. Clean black heels, modest. Her navy pantsuit pressed just right. She'd worn it for TV interviews and boardrooms. Today, it was armor. Pre-boarding. Now open for passengers needing extra time, the gate agent called. Amina moved a little closer, still in Group 1. First class. She'd booked it months ago. No upgrade. No mistake. She belonged there. Two men behind her spoke low. She a speaker or something? Maybe media. Definitely not a flight attendant. Amina kept her back straight. Pretended she didn't hear. More people trickled into. A white woman in Lululemon slid up beside her and gave a polite smile, then double-checked Amina's boarding pass with a quick glance, like it might have been counterfeit. Amina was used to that look. It wasn't hate, it was doubt. Now, boarding Group 1, first-class passengers. Amina stepped forward with the rest. The gate agent, a young white man with a headset, gave her a pause. Not long, but enough. His eyes flicked from her face to her boarding pass, then back. You're in first? He asked. She nodded. Yes. He took the pass, scanned it. The beep echoed louder than it should have. All right, thank you, Dr. Hayes. He said her name but didn't meet her eyes. Amina walked through the gate and down the jet bridge. Her hands trembled slightly, though her face didn't show it. This wasn't new, but it always felt like the first time. She thought of how many white men in jeans had breezed past that gate agent without a blink. She thought of her mentor, Dr. Randolph, who once said, "The day you stop noticing it is the day it breaks you." Inside the plane, the air was cooler. A scent of citrus and recycled breath floated past. She found her seat, 2A, a window. As she placed her bag in the overhead bin, a flight attendant glanced over and then did a double take. Another one. She didn't say anything, just moved on. But Amina felt it. She sat, smoothed her skirt, and let out a slow breath. Outside, ground crew moved like shadows beneath the wing. She took out her notebook. On the front, neurons spark change. Her fingers hesitated at the edge of the page. This flight hadn't taken off yet, but something told her this story would. Amina moved down the narrow aisle, her hand brushing the headrests as she walked. Her heels clicked against the floor, soft but steady. Row 2, left side, window. But when she reached her seat, someone was already in it. A white woman in a cream cardigan sat there, scrolling through her phone. Her Louis Vuitton tote occupied the footspace. Without looking up, she said, "This is my seat." Amina paused. "I think it's mine," she said calmly. The woman glanced up, eyes sweeping Amina from hair to heels. Her mouth tightened. "You're probably in economy. Check again." Amina held out her boarding pass. 2A. Window. The woman blinked, then laughed. Light, but not kind. "Sweetheart, are you sure?" Before Amina could respond, a flight attendant approached. Blonde hair and a tight bun. Bright red lipstick. "Is there a problem here?" she asked. The woman in the seat pointed at Amina. "She says this is her seat, but I'm pretty sure it's mine." Amina raised her boarding pass again. "Ma'am," the flight attendant said to Amina, voice gentle but firm, "would you mind checking with economy real quick? We're trying to get everyone settled." Amina's heart thudded hard once, then again. "I already did," she said, her voice steady. "This is my seat. 2A. A couple in row 3 looked up. A man across the aisle shifted uncomfortably. "The Air turned dense. The attendant sighed, took the boarding pass, and looked it over. "Oh, you're Dr. Hayes. My apologies," she said, blinking fast. "You're right." The woman in the seat frowned. "Really? That's strange. I could have sworn—" Amina didn't respond. She waited. The flight attendant turned to the woman. "Your seat is actually 2B, the aisle." "Oh. Huh." The woman stood, slow and reluctant. She slid over with a sigh as though she was doing Amina a favor. Amina sat in her rightful seat. Her hands were calm, but her jaw ached. She'd been clenching it. The woman beside her didn't look over again. The attendant didn't offer another word. Amina placed her coat on her lap, eyes out the window. The ground crew was still moving luggage. A small child up front started to cry. She wasn't angry, yet, but the shame sat heavy on her chest. Not because she did something wrong, but because once again the room had decided she didn't belong. Before she even opened her mouth, she breathed in. The cool, recycled air scratched her throat. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about how easy it was for some people to question her presence, to erase her, to believe she was out of place simply because she looked like her. The engine started to hum, low and steady. She pressed her hand against her notebook. "Don't let them shrink you." She'd written that on a sticky note last year. She could still see it, stuck to her mirror. Today, she needed it more than ever. The plane began to taxi. Amina leaned her head against the window, eyes fixed on the runway lights blurring past. Her reflection stared back. Tired eyes, lips pressed in a hard line. The quiet hum of the engines filled the space where her thoughts grew loud. She shouldn't still be thinking about it. But she was, that look, the suggestion in the woman's voice, the pause from the flight attendant. As if her presence didn't fit the picture. Amina closed her eyes. The seat vibrated softly beneath her. A memory slipped in. 2nd grade. Gifted program. She was the only black girl in the class. "You speak so well," her teacher had said. Wide-eyed. "You're so articulate." She'd smiled then, thinking it was a compliment. But she learned later. People said that when they didn't expect it. When they saw her skin before her mind. She opened her eyes just as the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Good afternoon, folks. This is Captain Miller. We're just about ready for takeoff. Should be a smooth ride into Denver this evening. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." Routine words. But something in his tone shifted near the end, like a pause that meant something more. Then came the unexpected shuffle. The cockpit door opened. Footsteps approached. A tall man in a pilot's uniform stepped into first class. Amina blinked. He scanned the cabin, stopping 2 rows ahead, then backtracking. He looked directly at her. "Dr. Hayes?" he asked. She sat up straighter, startled. "Yes?" His face lit up with recognition. "I thought I saw your name on the manifest," he said, walking closer. "You spoke at the NBNC conference, right? Neural Bio Networks?" She nodded slowly. "I did." He reached out to shake her hand. "Incredible work. I read your paper last month on signal fidelity and artificial memory channels. It's changing the way we think about neurological reconstruction." There was a pause behind him. The flight attendant, the same one from before, stood silently a few steps back. Amina felt her cheeks flush, not from embarrassment, but from something else. Presence. She smiled, just slightly. "Thank you. I didn't think anyone outside the symposium had seen it yet." "Oh, I make it a point to keep up," he said. "I've got a daughter studying biochemistry. You're one of her heroes." He gave a short nod, then turned to Go. "Pleasure having you on board, Dr. Hayes." The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. The flight attendant didn't speak. The woman in 2B shifted in her seat but said nothing. Amina looked out the window again, this time with her spine a little straighter. Sometimes the sky holds more than clouds. Sometimes it holds clarity. She didn't need the pilot's praise, but it landed, because it reminded her who she was. The hum of the cabin returned, but something in the air still crackled. Amina adjusted the strap of her bag under the seat. Her fingers moved with purpose, but her mind drifted, circling around. What had just happened? The handshake, the praise, the silence that followed. Beside her, the white man in 3C leaned slightly toward her. His voice was low. "Well," he said with a smirk, "guess you showed them." She didn't look at him. Her jaw tightened. Showed them what? She kept her gaze forward, fixed on the seat back in front of her. A screen blinked in soft blue, waiting for touch. She didn't move. Her silence was an answer, but he didn't hear. Yet Amina's heartbeat thudded steadily in her chest. Not fast, not loud, just there. Like a metronome measuring the weight of things left unsaid. Why did it take a title and a pilot's handshake for her presence to feel accepted? Why did it feel like winning a prize she never asked to compete for? She hated that part of her had, appreciated the moment, because that part still craved recognition in rooms that pretended not to see her. The seatbelt sign clicked off. People stirred. Amina stood and stretched slightly. Her back ached, not from the seat, but from carrying invisible. "Wait!" She stepped into the aisle and moved toward the galley, needing air, space, something. The flight attendant stood alone by the silver cart, pretending to rearrange coffee packs. When she noticed Amina, her face stiffened, then softened, artificially. "Dr. Hayes," she said. "I just wanted to say sorry about earlier. It's been a long day." Amina looked at her. Really looked. The woman's name tag read Erin. Her hands were still moving, though she'd stopped working. Amina tilted her head. "I understand," she said quietly. "Long days happen." Erin smiled, relieved. But Amina wasn't done. "It's just, I've had a lifetime of long days too." The woman's face twitched, unsure how to respond. Amina's lips curved upward, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She turned and walked back to her seat. Her steps were slow, controlled. Inside, though, a quiet storm brewed, steady and deep. It didn't roar. It didn't rage. But it didn't rest either. She sat down again, adjusted her posture, and breathed. She was not here to educate. She was not here to entertain. She was here. And that alone was enough. The clouds outside blurred in gray streaks as the plane climbed. Higher. But inside Amina, things were becoming clearer. Visibility should not be a battle. But if it was, she was done asking to be seen. The plane hit a patch of turbulence. A sudden jolt made the overhead bins rattle. A few passengers gasped, hands gripping armrests. Amina didn't flinch. She was used to shifts in pressure. Still, she placed a hand on the armrest, not out of fear, but for grounding. Her other hand rested on her lap, fingers curled tightly into her palm. She hadn't noticed until her knuckles turned white. The cabin lights flickered briefly before steadying. Flight attendants walked slower now, one hand braced on the seats as they moved down the aisle. Someone laughed nervously in the back. Amina stared out the window. Clouds churned below like a sea of ghosts, soft but with depth that could swallow a person whole. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. Calm, composed, but only from the outside. Inside, something cracked. It wasn't rage. That would have been easier. It was grief. Grief for the years she had spent shrinking herself to fit into spaces that weren't built for her. Grief for the questions she always had to answer before she could begin her work. "Where are you from?" "You sure you're the lead doctor?" "Do you have ID?" Grief for the little girl who had learned to smile even when she was insulted with compliments. "You're so articulate." "You're not like the others." The plane tilted slightly, then leveled out. But the weight in her chest didn't lift. She remembered a faculty dinner during her residency. How she'd walked in, dressed sharp, ready. How the maitre d' had handed her a menu, assuming she was there to serve. She'd laughed then, polite, corrective. She wasn't laughing now. A tear slipped down the side of her face. Quiet, quick. She didn't wipe it away, let it fall. She thought of her mother, who'd taught her to speak clearly, dress smart, and walk with her head high. "You'll have to be twice as good," she used to say. "That's not fair, but it's real." It had been real for too long. The system was built to doubt her, then clap when she overperformed, then resent her for standing tall. It wasn't broken. It was designed that way. Amina blinked. Another tear followed. The man beside her was asleep now, unaware. The flight attendant passed again, offering bottled water with a tight smile. Amina didn't take one. She didn't need to sip something cold to feel steady. She was finding her own balance. The grief she felt wasn't weakness. It was clarity. The turbulence inside her had settled into something else. Something harder. Something strong. She didn't need to be seen anymore. She needed the system to be undone. From the roots. The plane kept cruising, altitude holding steady. But inside Amina, something had shifted for good. The plane sailed smooth now. No more bumps. No more shaking. But Amina's thoughts were moving faster than the jet engines. She opened her laptop. Fingers hovered above the keyboard. She didn't have to write. No one asked her to. No spotlight waited at the end of this flight. But her heart was full, too full to keep quiet. She clicked open a blank document. At the top, she typed, "Black, skin in first class." The cursor blinked, waiting. She exhaled. Then she began. "I am tired of earning my place twice, of sitting in a seat I paid for and still being told I don't belong. This isn't just my story. This is legacy. This is labor. This is lineage." Her fingers moved faster now. The words didn't just come, they poured, like a dam breaking. She wrote about her mother, Rosa Hayes, who scrubbed cabin floors on red-eyes and double shifts. "They never let her board through the jet bridge," she typed. "Only the back stairs." She wrote about her grandmother, Ora, who rode segregated buses and never learned to swim because no pool in her town allowed black children. And she wrote about herself, a girl who tested into gifted classes at 8, a young woman who was told she looked more like a model than a scientist, a doctor who was asked to show ID in places she was scheduled to speak. She didn't soften it. She didn't explain it. She just wrote it true. Rows of quiet passengers sat around her. Some read, some slept, some scrolled. In row 3, a woman across the aisle closed her hardcover book and looked up. She was black, maybe early 40s, braided hair, denim jacket, calm eyes. Their gazes met for a second. That second stretched. The woman didn't speak, didn't smile. She just nodded once, and Amina felt it, like static between fingertips, like fire in still air. She nodded back. It wasn't loud, but it was thunder. In that silent gesture lived decades, the weight of work, the strength of survival, the unspoken. "I see you." "I know." Amina's throat tightened, but she didn't stop typing. She ended the piece with a memory of sitting on her mother's lap during a layover shift. She'd asked, "Why do you work on planes?" Her mother had smiled, tired but proud. "So one day you can fly without cleaning first." Amina looked down at her hands now. Her seat. Her open laptop. She wasn't flying alone, she never had. Outside the window, the clouds thinned. The earth returned, dotted with lights. The descent would begin soon, but something had already landed. Her truth. The wheels touched down with a soft thud. A hush fell over the cabin. Seatbelt signs still lit. The engines hummed lower now, like the end of a song. Amina shut her laptop and closed her eyes for a breath. She wasn't tired. Not exactly. She just needed a second to feel what this moment meant. The seatbelt sign blinked off. People rose like popcorn, stretching, unzipping overhead bins, muttering about connections. And then, the cockpit door opened. The pilot stepped. Out again. His voice, calm and clear, filled the cabin. "Before we deplane," he said, "I'd like to personally thank one of our passengers." Heads turned. Dr. Amina Hayes. "It was an honor flying you today." There was a beat of silence, then 2 passengers clapped. Then a few more. It wasn't a roar, but it didn't have to be. Amina stood slowly. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She just nodded toward the front, calm and steady. "Thank you, Captain," she said. The flight attendant who doubted her stood frozen by the galley wall. Amina met her eyes. There was no smile this time, just quiet grace. She stepped off the plane. The air in the jet bridge was warm, a little stale, and still, somehow, lighter. She walked the terminal calmly, her heels clicking on the tile. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't shrinking. She walked like the ground belonged to her, too, because it did. As she passed gate B17, she saw her. A young black girl, maybe 10, holding a book. Hoodie zipped to her chin, eyes wide. She sat cross-legged in a chair, headphones pushed back. Her mother was nearby, on the phone. The girl stared at Amina the way girls stare at superheroes. Amina paused. Just for a moment. Then she smiled. Warm, deep, real. The girl smiled back, mouth slightly open, as if storing that image away forever. Amina kept walking. She didn't need applause. She didn't need headlines. What she needed was already happening. That girl saw her. And because of that, maybe she'd walk taller too. Amina reached baggage claim. Her carry-on waited by her side like an old friend. In it, her notes, her speech, the op-ed draft. But most of all, her name. Her full, unshaken name. Dr. Amina Hayes. She stepped outside into the sunlight. The wind lifted a loose strand of hair. She tucked it behind her ear and smiled softly. Visibility was never the goal. Liberation was. And on this day, in this small, true way, she'd touched it.